Hello and welcome to the program Road to 2030, a program which spotlights the various initiatives being undertaken by the government in pursuit of Vision 2030, under which the government is aiming to transform Zimbabwe into an upper middle income economy by 2030. My name is Leonda Monda. In today's program, I'm joined by Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education Director Communications, Mr. Taonga Nandoro, Jeffrey Nyandoro, the Impact Manager at CAMFED, Genius Makarudze, Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator, Child Protection Society, and Naison Bunu, National Coordinator, Zimbabwe Network of Early Childhood Development Education, ZINECDA. Welcome panelists, and I'm surely hoping that our discussion today will show the nation the impact that the different organizations have had on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our discussion today will center on one of the most important assets in the Vision 2030 agenda: children. This discussion comes after commemorations to mark the Day of the African Child were held on June 16. First initiated by the then Organization of African Unity in 1991, the International Day of the African Child commemorates children killed during the Soweto uprising in South Africa, while also raising awareness of the ongoing need to improve education for children in Africa. Every year, governments, NGOs, international organizations, and other stakeholders gather to discuss the challenges hindering the full realization of the rights of the African child. This year's commemorations were under the theme, The Rights of the Child in the Digital Environment. So I'll begin, to begin this whole discussion, we'll start by asking Mr. Taongana from the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. What did this year's theme, in terms of the Day of the African Child, what did it mean to you from the ministry perspective, particularly when it comes to infants?
Okay, thank you very much. The theme, the rights of the child in the digital environment, resonates very well with the strides that government has made in ensuring that there's last mile connectivity in all our schools. And as government, we are making sure that we leave no place and no one behind by making sure that they are digitally connected. In fact, it has come at an opportune time since we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we had to resort to new strategies for education to continue, for learning to continue, learning not to stop. We had to actually continue to digitalize within our schools, making sure that our children are now learning on platforms, various platforms, whether it's in the urban, peri-urban, or in rural areas. So it has actually come at a very opportune time where we have actually embraced digital technology in terms of us providing quality education for all our pupils.
All right, now there's something you mentioned there, which is not leaving anyone behind. And based on that, I just want to quickly go through the address by President Emmerson Mnangagwa at the opening of this year's Junior Parliament, which coincided with the Day of the African Child commemorations, where he said, "When used properly, the digital world promotes our children's rights to culture, leisure, and play, which are essential for their well-being and development. Furthermore, the use of digital technology such as computers, mobile phones, and the internet can help to increase children's participation at the local, national, and international levels. Therefore, awareness of and access to digital means for children to express their views must be promoted and supported." So no one is being left behind here. And President Mnangagwa there is alluding to the positive sides of the internet. But given the darker side of the internet, as a nation, how do we uphold the rights of the children and still protect them in this digital age? And I'll give that to you.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe to begin with, we need to bear in mind that the government have got measures in place to ensure that our children are safe as we digitalize all the communities, starting from urban, rural, and all the marginalized communities. So in Zimbabwe, we have been implementing STELLA, and to curb and to ensure that children are safe, we have policies that protect and uphold the rights of children online, and as well as protecting that they are not they don't fall victims of sexual exploitation online. They don't fall victims of adult pornography. They don't even fall victims of any forms of abuse online. So the policies that we have here in Zimbabwe, beginning with our constitution, ensure that children are protected in the digitalized world. And also, as civil society organizations, we have been working in communities, ensuring that we raise awareness to children, to community members, to the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, as well as other civil society actors, to ensure that communities are aware of the policies that protect children from any forms of violence in the digitalized world. Then besides that, we also have referral pathways that exist within our communities to ensure that children know where to report when they fall victims of any forms of abuse. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else want to elaborate on that in terms of the safety and security, but still upholding the rights of children?
Of course. I think there's an issue where His Excellency mentioned that when used properly, you see, the rights of the child are protected in the digital age. When used properly, we need to underline that. And the president goes on to say it can help even our culture. So if used improperly, we can affect our philosophy of UNU and Ubuntu through the same digital platforms which we seek to benefit our children. So we should be wary of unsavory content that may be on digital platforms that may expose our children to some behaviors that are not of our society and our culture.
Now, with the introduction of all these policies, coinciding as well with the introduction of the color system, how has the color system been able to fit into the digital environment in terms of education?
Well, the color system is the continuous assessment learning activity. It is there to make sure that our pupils are innovative. And when they are innovative, they are able to solve the problems within the communities in which they reside. So if you're a Zimbabwean, you are able to build Zimbabwe and by looking at the problems that Zimbabwe is facing and using color and making sure that you can address the problems that Zimbabwe is facing. As His Excellency has always said, nyika inovakwa nevenevayo. So it is us as Zimbabweans, from an early child, from ECDA, right, through to primary education and secondary education. If you address the issues of all our pupils embracing the continuous assessment learning activities, we're then able to build our own country without relying on imports from Western nations or other countries. We can actually build our own country and feed our own country by ourselves.
So it works to our own benefit.
Yes.
We're going to take a short break, but please join us shortly as we resume our discussion. Welcome back to the program Road to 2030. Today we're discussing children's rights in the digital age. And here we have statistics indicating that there are about 590 million internet users in Africa, including children, who represent a third of all internet users in the world and are increasingly exposed to the virtual environment. Now, given that only about 5% of children and young people living in Eastern and Southern Africa have access to the internet, despite COVID showing us the need for such access in order to fulfill some of the basic rights of children, including the right to education. What have we learned and what mechanisms are we putting in place at a national and regional level to improve internet access for all children? I'll start with you, Mr. Buni.
I think there are several issues that are being looked at, such factors, and which I think will improve, one, in terms of connectivity, I think, which Mr. Ndoro alluded to, and where government is making efforts in order for connectivity to be reached in many schools and also in many centers which are community and which are technical. But the second issue which is important is the access. You can have the connectivity but without the gadgets in order to connect. And that's the second issue. And in most cases, you will find that in urban areas, perhaps they might have the 3G and 4Gs, and which are through phones and also through computers and through various tablets. But you'll find that in rural areas, they tend to use the smaller versions of the phones and also do not have the computers, but also have mostly the 3Gs. And this limits the access. And also during COVID, I think it was difficult. It was found out that 30% of the learners were able, in some research which was done, were able actually to reach to even radio lessons. And of those, very few ECD or infants learners were able to actually utilize that utility, mainly because they will rely on others. You will find many children were using their parents or caregiver phones in order to do that. So one, there is that issue of the connectivity and also the access in terms of the gadgets, but also thirdly, that whether these are there, they need actually to have that literacy in order to access and to know how to maneuver. But also in the context of the rights issues, there are rights and responsibilities. It means there are also perpetrators and victims. And we are looking not only that adults are perpetrators, but you can have also perpetrators among the children, and you can have victims among the children. But the role which is there is the critical role of the caregiver and the teacher and the parents, because they have got to control access. Yes, there are ways in order to control so that children or learners do not access sites which are not good for them. And many parents perhaps might not have that knowledge. That's one. So there's need for awareness in order for the children to be able to reach sites which are good for learning, sites which are used even for their own learning, not only for assessment in the color. But I think the important thing which most people miss out in terms of color is the learning part of it. Color is not supposed to be a test-based one, but it is supposed to promote self-expression, problem solving. It is supposed to promote even the cultural issues where they are living in order to understand their own environment and also to use what is in their own environment to solve real problems. And through this, the reporting part, which is very much unfortunately being focused on by many, is the last bit, which is the reporting. But on its own, it's a very good learning process which is required, where children learn collaboratively and also form relationships, are able to ask questions, are able to dig beyond what is on the surface. And this is good. That can be done also by learning from other people, not only their own community, but if they've got that digital literacy, that means they can even search on engines to say what has been done by others. Is it the same with ours? How best can we move forward? So in that, so I said there's the connectivity. You need also access in terms of the gadgets. You need also the control. You need also the children to have the literacy, which is needed by both the parents and the learners. And that is very important.
Okay, Mr. Ndoro, I'll move on to you here. Based on the same question, but now I'm just going to add a little bit more to it. What is the level of preparedness if we were ever hit by such a crisis again, as the pandemic?
Oh, the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education at the moment has got a policy or a strategy to avert itself from future emergencies. And we're not just saying COVID-19. We're saying it could be a flood, it could be a cyclone that will stop schooling. It could be any emergency, it could be a drought, it could be an economic crisis. So we have got a strategy which is underpinned by digital learning during times when face-to-face learning cannot take place. So we are working as the whole of government to provide infrastructure with the Ministry of Energy and Power Development to ensure that there's electricity to the last mile, there's connectivity to the last mile, excuse me, and also to make sure that the ministry provides the content. And this is on digital platforms, like the access that Mr. Bunu was talking about. So we already have a strategy that in the event that another international emergency occurs of international concern, we will still have our education continuing, we will still have learning taking place because we will have put everything in place.
My follow-up question to you was going to be on infrastructure, but I'm happy that you've already touched on that and answered to that. Let's move on to Jeffrey.
Yes.
What role, same topic on the lessons learned and the mechanisms that are being put in place. What role is your organization playing in line with that?
All right, so as an organization, mainly we've been implementing the STELLA with the schools. So just to make it clear, STELLA stands for Smart Tablet Learning Assessments. It's not a name of a girl. This is an application which is actually used then, to assess learners in ECDA and ECDB to be able to see how they are progressing. So in our research then, we were looking at the pros and cons as well from the teachers to see how then, technology is doing. And one of the major milestones of STELLA and the major milestones of using technology in school is that the curriculum is now within a tablet. And when the curriculum is now within a tablet, as you can know, that content can actually be updated. And as I understand now, the curriculum, there are discussions around the curriculum. And, so when content is updated, it's easy enough for the teachers to be able to see in real time what actually has been updated. So as an organization within the research part, we have seen, technology and digitalization of the curriculum being one of the major milestones that, from the feedback that we receive from the teachers, that, we are no longer doing much of the paper-based part. We are phasing out the paper-based part, which is also one of the major ways to even cut costs within the ministry, to be able to print a lot of books, to be able to also train learners. And another major advantage also to the ECD learners is that within the STELLA platform, you are able to track what we call child steps. You track the learning outcomes of a child on a daily basis. A teacher is able to actually update, the progress of a child. And the good news is, you can even download a PDF report that you can send to a parent. So everything now is actually in real time. So this comes actually as a positive thing, to the ministry and to Zimbabwe from the pilot we have done and the plans also to expand, to say digitalization is real, education must be modernized, and once it's modernized, it will be able, to beef up and to have learners to learn on things that are current and trending.
Come back to Road to 2030, where today we're speaking to the ministry and civil organizations within education and looking at the previously held 16th of June International Day of the African Child, where this year's theme was the right of the child in the digital environment. And before the break, we had touched a bit on STELLA. And we, it's quite an interesting initiative and proving that a lot is being done in implementing digital innovations within education in the country. Now, I just want to move on to Genius. And again, we're still on STELLA. What has your organization been able to do? What has CPS been able to do in terms of implementing STELLA?
Okay, thank you very much. So as a Child Protection Society, we have been working in partnership with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in coordinating capacity building activities to teachers, school heads, and teachers in charge, as well as members of the community. Then we've been also offering technical support to the schools that were trained on STELLA. Then in addition to that, I would like to indicate that from a recent study that was conducted, an evaluation, since we were piloting STELLA since 2019, teachers attested that innovation is good when it comes to delivering quality education. Why? Because they indicated quite a number of advantages of using STELLA. Because with STELLA, teachers are able to carry out continuous learner assessments, which enable them to track the development milestones of ECDB learners. Then the STELLA also enables teachers to track the attendance of learners using technology. There is no need for them to tally on their papers, but they can easily generate an attendance report for the whole class by clicking a button. Then they also indicated that STELLA was a game changer in the education sector, as even senior members of the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education are able to supervise the work that is being done at the school by teachers without visiting the school. Why? Because the data that is collected, or everything that happens on the tablet, is synced to a server. So that enables district schools inspectors to be able to supervise their teachers in the event that there is a flood or there are pandemics. Teachers or school officials can continue doing their activities. Then I also want to add this: everything that happens on the offline tablet, once it's saved, data is saved to a central server. So even in the event of the teacher or the school loses the tablet, it means that they can retrieve their data. Even if the school, there is an uncontrolled fire which results in the burning of the classroom or storerooms, the teacher can retrieve their data once their information has been synced to the server. So those have been some of the experiences that have been articulated by the teachers who are the end users of STELLA, that this is a good initiative that was introduced by the government, ensuring that all the schools are digitalized. And one thing that we need to take note is the schools that we are talking of are the marginalized schools, which are P3 schools in rural communities. They are the ones who were selected by the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education to pilot STELLA within the schools, within the school vicinity. So you can see that the government is trying by all means to ensure that no school is left behind in terms of digitalizing. They are not focusing on urban schools, but even those marginalized schools are being given a platform to experience the advantages of digitalizing in the education sector.
Mr. Ndoro, Genius has touched extensively on how the ministry has been involved in implementing STELLA. From a ministry level, what has been the short-term or long-term foreseen benefits of STELLA? Well,
the program is very good for the ministry and for all our pupils, including parents. You will notice that the program actually identifies the physical, emotional, intellectual, and cognitive development of a child, right from ECDA right through to secondary education. So those developments, when monitored by the ministry, were able to address any challenges that the pupil may have and then correct them, and also identify in the same vein the strengths of that child, so that that child may actually choose a career path early on in life, which then can actually assist us in the socio-economic transformation of the country. So that program is really beneficial for us. Tied to that, is what we call the foundational literacy and numeracy, because you can then see that is this child by the grade 2, are they able to actually to read or to add and to subtract? We previously have been having pupils who get to grade 7 and they cannot read. You give them a paragraph and they cannot read it. How then do you expect that child in that rural, remote area to read the question paper in an examination? This is where you then get those 0% in certain areas of the country. Now, with this program coming in, we expect that in the next few years, by 2030, we should have every Zimbabwean will be fully literate and able to read. We won't have non-readers getting into an examination. They will be able to read and comprehend and answer the examination, and the 0% will be a thing of the past. Even at all levels, 0% will be a thing of the past. If you look at all those who graduate to A level, and this is why Zimbabwe has got about 85% of pass rate at A level. It's because those who go to A level, they are readers. They are readers. The 15% who don't really make it, it's not a question of whether they can read or not. It's a question of what combination they took, or where they usually have pressure from their parents or guardians or peers that, no, I'm going to be a doctor, and yet really you're probably supposed to be an engineer or a lawyer, but you decided to take a career path which is not yours. That's the 15% that we're going to change. Now, if we identify these trends from ECDA, right, using the STELLA program, by the time we get to A level, we already know that we have got a soldier in the making. We've got a doctor in the making. We've got an engineer in the making by the time they're in upper 6. So when they get to tertiary education, they already know which path they're actually going to take, and it helps us as a country to develop. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from both Genius and yourself, Mr. Ndoro, this platform is assisting children from early childhood right through to tertiary.
Yes.
So they're quite, extensive in terms of long-term benefits.
Yes.
And you mentioned there's something about cognitive development, which I'm going to throw to Mr. Bunu. In terms of implementing STELLA, how has that been going for your organization, particularly in your area of early childhood?
When it comes to STELLA, I think I'll focus more on decision making. And as ZINECDA, we are more of an advocacy organization to influence the conducive environment for early learners. But with this STELLA, I think Mr. Ndoro has explained on the cognitive aspect, because there are about 4 main domains, which is the cognitive or intellectual. You have got the social, and then you have got the physical, and then you have got the language, which is very important at that early level, and which he was also mentioning when he was describing that. But for me, why it is important is for decision making even at higher level, like what he was saying. You will know where children are in terms of the domains. The physical, the cognitive, the social, the emotional, and the language. And when they are lagging behind in terms of where they are supposed to be as learners, it means the ministry would know that, let's say, learners are lagging in terms of cognitive development, specifically in problem solving. In that way, it's not the problem of the children. They would know perhaps it's the teacher factor. That means they've got now to adapt to say, there's something which needs to be done to improve that problem solving. So we need to capacity develop the teachers. We need the support systems. We need the materials which are supposed to enable children to catch up on their developmental domains, especially on cognitive level. In that, it's good for decision making in order to do that. Also, in that, it is also good in terms of identification of talent. At national level, you would know where you are. and how many children can be supported from that early level so that they can pursue their academic and also their other careers right from that. And you tailor-make the programs which are required for them to excel and not to waste their own time in such areas. But also, as an assessment, it's also good to compare what our children, where they are with others. I know there's the Zimbabwe Early Learning Assessment, which is at end of grade 2, but it is also important, which is the STELLA, which is there, to formalize so that STELLA becomes the early learning assessment for preschool, so that you know what is there. And when it is, you are formulating the policies, you are very much aware it is evidence-based rather than basing on intuition. So in that respect, it is very, very important. So that it is digital. The good thing that you said, that it is instantaneous, you can see it at a touch of a button, or even their planning department and statistics can bring out that information and enable adaptive management. And resources are channeled to problem areas, especially money. We know that the budget which is going to ECD is not enough. It's less than 2% of the education budget, and also the education budget which is not enough. So in that respect, you make the most out of the little that you have by saying that when the problems are here, let's channel it this way.
All right, now still on ECD, the government made it compulsory. I think it's almost now a decade since it made it compulsory for all schools to implement ECDs in their schools, in their respective schools. What impact have you seen so far?
In terms of the impact, since 2004, when that policy came in, I think we've seen a lot of impact. I think in Southern Africa, or actually in Africa, you'll find that Zimbabwe was one of the first country to introduce ECD in 2005, the ECDB, and also to introduce a curriculum in 2010, and also to make it compulsory that no child would go into grade 1 without going through ECDB. Sorry, in 2014 for the 2015. That alone shows that the government has made a lot of strides. It was also, it is still among the very few African countries where they are training ECD teachers or facilitators, as we say. Now we've got almost more than 11 teachers' colleges which are training ECD teachers. We've got more than 5 universities which is training in degrees, not only the bachelor's but also higher degrees. And we are among the few countries which has got a lot of experts. But even with that, there are still some areas which are not well covered, which we still need, like the curriculum. Yes, the curriculum which is there, yes, it's good that it is part of that curriculum. It's good that it is competence-based. It's good that we have got teachers, but where we need also to refocus on, that ECD curriculum needs to be domain-based, like what we're saying, based on the physical development, cognitive development, social and emotional development, and also on the linguistic, the language part of it. We need also to support facilities. You will find that they are almost required, which is 30,000 plus classrooms for ECD which are required. But there are only about 17,000 plus or minus 17,000. It means there is a huge shortfall. And you will find that in terms of children who are going for ECD, in ECDA, fewer children tend to go. And it's known through what they call that the number of children who are supposed to enter ECD. You'll find that they are below 30%.
Okay. So while you're on there, Mr. Bunu, I'm just going to throw this quickly to Mr. Ndoro. I think Mr. Bunu has highlighted the work that the government has been doing on, in implementing ECD. And, your ministry has been in the forefront of it. So I'd ask you the same question. What has been the impact? And if you could touch a little bit on the infrastructure issue that he's raised.
Okay. Perhaps to touch first on the infrastructure issue. Yes, the infrastructure can be a challenge, is a challenge, but it is because of the policies that we have made that the teacher-pupil ratio for ECD is 1:20. So we expect that one teacher to 20 pupils in a classroom. So multiply that by the number of children that are there. And with the low mortality rates that are there, you expect that most of our children will get to 4 years. And therefore, we have got the biggest population of our primary and secondary education levels within the ECD up to grade 2 stage. Because naturally, there's then natural selection as you go up. Some die, some drop out or something like that. But during ECD, we have got quite a number of pupils that need to get into ECD. So there's also demand for infrastructure. But the government, working obviously with development partners, we've been constructing a number of schools and even refurbishing the schools that are there, developing the schools that are there, making sure that we try and maintain that ratio of one teacher or 1:20. So we expect that there will be just 20 in a classroom, right? And then in the next classroom, we also expect just 20. So sometimes it's not the case. We admit it may be 1:30, 1:35, thereabouts, but as government, we're working towards it. And by 2030, we expect that we will have made sure that we are now a middle income economy that is providing quality education. And in terms of the successes, I think they speak for themselves. Zimbabwe is the most literate country in the whole world. There is nowhere in the world where you find someone as brilliant as a Zimbabwean. Go to Kenya, Zimbabweans are leading companies there. Go to South Africa, next door, it's Zimbabweans all over. Go to America, the EU, go to the United Nations. They are all Zimbabweans. We are the brightest. We are the chosen ones. Actually, we are the chosen.
The chosen
yes,
ones.
we're the chosen ones.
I'm feeling quite proud to be a Zimbabwean at the moment.